Are you an entrepreneur or ready to become a boss? Welcome to Hawaii Boss, the business podcast made in Hawaii, where you will hear from island movers and shakers on who they are and their impact on our state. And now, step into the office of your host for Hawaii Boss, David Pettijohn.
Aloha, Hawaii Boss podcast listeners out there. This is David Pettijohn, your host for the Hawaii Boss podcast, and we're excited today. We're going into the boss's office. If we want to find out about anything business related, we go to the Chamber of Commerce Hawaii, cochawaii.org, I believe is what it is. But we've got a special team that the A team is here today. We've got Keala Peters, who is the Vice President of Education and Workforce Development, and then another job too on top of it, Executive Director of Sector Partnerships. I don't know if she's got enough time during the day. And also with her today is we're excited to have Lord Ryan Lizardo, who is in charge of the work-based learning part of the workforce development team. And so again, folks, Hawaii Boss team is here in your office. We've got a few questions for you, but first, welcome and aloha.
Thank you. Aloha, David.
Yeah, thanks for having us here today.
Sure. So listen, Chamber of Commerce, people aren't quite sure exactly what that is. And then especially with you, workforce development, how does the Chamber of Commerce businesses, we think business when the Chamber of Commerce, but with you folks, you know, as you work together as a team, what is it? Tell us a little bit about what your day-to-day work is.
Sure. So people are familiar with the Chamber of Commerce. We've been in existence for over 150 years, I believe, as the voice of business, making sure that businesses in Hawaii can operate. And so the Chamber does a lot of work in the area of advocacy and policy, et cetera. But just as of recently, in fact, 2.5 years ago, the Chamber's made a concerted effort development. And we'll talk about why we do it, and then we'll talk about what it is. The why is businesses in Hawaii aren't able to operate unless they have a solid workforce and secure talent pipeline. And we know that is more relevant, in fact, today than ever because of the environment that we're working in. So yeah, our goal is to make sure that local businesses can find the employees they need so that they can operate and thrive.
Having those people at the right place at the right time, particularly with the way Hawaii is shaped out in the middle of the ocean, and so it poses its special challenges. Lord Ryan, what is it how do you contribute to this in your role?
Thanks, David. I just want to preface, I'm having some connectivity challenges, so I might move in the office, and if you lose me a little bit, that's just because of the connectivity.
Okay.
But could you repeat the question one more time?
Sure. Just as your role as the work-based learning program manager, what is your role in this workforce development and trying to make sure that we have enough folks to do the work that's here in Hawaii to do?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I mean, my kind of primary work revolves around our schools and making sure that they have the right business partners to support in their work-based learning activities. So work-based learning really spans a wide range of different things, including guest speakers, mock job interviewers, internships, so on and so forth. So my role is to make sure that the schools that we partner with at the Chamber are getting that interface, and I act as that bridge to industry to support in getting these students those type of opportunities.
So a bridge, you're saying there's the business community, they need workers, the school community, they need jobs, and trying to build that bridge. Is that an easy thing to do?
I mean, it's a mixture of that. Like our students do need jobs, but for the most part, with K-12 system, we want to make sure that they're getting that exploration and awareness, right?
Sure.
And so with our partner high schools, at the most part, we want to make sure that they're already getting exposed to industry, knowing that they're learning about this in their career and technical education classes, as well as their academy classes, because most of our schools are now in academy systems that kind of reflect the college, right?
Sure.
So they get to pick some type of pathway that's similar to that of a major and explore that within their high school career so they can develop whether or not they want to go into that and pursue that specific education in the future.
Yeah, I think that academy model is well used in Hawaii throughout the islands and very effective, I think. Keala, how did that come about? Is that something that you've been involved in as far as, again, working alongside of Lord Ryan? how do we build those relationships?
Yeah. Well, and we should probably take a step back, David. And so
Okay.
really what we're talking about is preparing Hawaii's youth for college and career success. That's kind of the big picture.
Okay.
We want to help our youth in Hawaii be able to have family-sustaining careers here in Hawaii. And so there's a whole spectrum of things that the Chamber does under our education and workforce development umbrella.
Okay.
One of them is working with the students when they're young and when they're needing to identify maybe a career that they might want to pursue, or simply get them excited about learning. So that's a lot of what Lord Ryan does, and we can go deeper into that.
All right.
So that's work that we do in the K through 12 space, connecting learning to real world work so that light bulbs go off and students get excited. So lots of work being done in that space. But as we move along and we think about what Hawaii needs to be able to have a thriving workforce, as students graduate from high school, we simply need our students to aspire to do something after high school. So we want to help them connect to something post-secondary.
Sure.
It could be a 4-year degree, it could be military service, it could be technical school for training. We just want to make sure those students move on to something, because we know that more than 80% of jobs here in Hawaii require some post-secondary work. So we're setting our students up for success if we help them connect from high school to something. And so that's really important too, those connection points. And then a whole nother bucket is, how do we help people in Hawaii who maybe are what we call dislocated workers, seeking employment, unemployed. So we do work in that space too. So I wanted to give that big picture for you.
Sure, and I appreciate that, because again, some of us were navigating through and exactly how you guys affect change in your office, but certainly, the work starting young and helping creating that opportunity for some sort of path, even if they don't choose something that they have. Again, that was for me. I didn't know that there were different paths. I was raised sort of a blue collar guy. My parents were bakers. I thought, well, listen, I don't want to be a baker, so I joined not that the baking is bad. Hey, I have a few pounds to show for it, but I didn't want to get up at 11 o'clock at night and go make the donuts, right? And that's the reality of it, and working 12 hours a day, and there's a lot of people that are out there working hard like that, food businesses and things. But there's other ways, and so like you said, military. That's what I did. I got out of there, a couple days after graduating high school. Joined the military. So there are lots of paths for folks. It's sort of like you're creating a pipeline of work-ready labor force for Hawaii. But if it was just easy, I guess it would be all fixed already. What are some of the challenges you're seeing out there, particularly as it relates to COVID? What's impacting your work now?
Yeah, it's such a broad question. The area that we focus our energy, because we are the Chamber of Commerce, is getting businesses involved in supporting students, preparing students. And so, like Lord Ryan said, we serve as that bridge. So one of our fundamental needs is to recruit more businesses to be able to say, you know what, I've got a little bit of extra time. I've got skin in the game. I care about creating a talent pipeline for me. And so I'll volunteer some of my time to work with Lord Ryan and Keala and the other folks. So again, we just need every business in Hawaii to feel as though it's their kuleana to prepare our talent pipeline. And we can talk about some of those specific ways that employers get involved. Relative to COVID, the list is long of challenges in our space. And because the schools are focused on essential functions, like simply pivoting to in-person, well, first virtual, then back to in-person, their plates are really full. But Lord Ryan's done a fabulous job adjusting some of our activities to be suitable for a virtual environment.
Well, everyone's had to turn to it, and look at us here, having these Zoom interviews and talking about important things. And thank goodness that we have this resource. I think it would have been challenging without it. But as you're, what are some of the ones that would make the most impact if there was a focus on certain jobs out there? Or you may not even look at specifically, we need this pool of workers in this field. We look at these, how do you break up what you're doing? What do you have goals for certain industries and things?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one, Lord Ryan. So immediately when the pandemic started, so this is April, May of 2020, a group of folks came together and said, okay, we need to double down in certain areas. We need to make sure we're steering students and workers into the areas where we know there's demand and they can earn a living wage. And so there was a study done called the Talent Roadmap to Recovery, and you can find that on the Hawaii Executive Collaborative's website. So essentially, it was a long process that we went through to identify these three sectors as those that we should double down on. And I don't think you'll find them as any surprise. The first is healthcare. The need is tremendous. The long-term forecasts are strong for jobs and high wages in that area, so healthcare. Second is technology, which is really exciting because technology, is not necessarily one industry, but almost every industry requires technology expertise. And so we're doing some work to really identify, okay, what are the opportunities in technology? So that's the second. And then the third is the skilled trades sector. And this is making sure that we have skilled laborers to be able to build and construct all of the projects that we have in our community that are being heavily invested in. We have billions of dollars coming into our community that will require welders and pipe fitters, and carpentry workers, et cetera. So those are the three that have been identified as in demand, high wage, high skill.
So it's no longer doctors and lawyers that, there's a whole other field of things that you can get into and be very successul.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's the same thing. Companies are starving for those skilled laborers. And it's it is a challenge. We're all competing for the same people. It feels like, too. So, ongoing. But those business partnerships seem to make the most difference. But as we Hawaii Boss, we like to know about what you guys do, but we also like to know about you in what brings people to do the kind of career that they're doing. Maybe what was their first job, and what is it about? That's what we're trying to do, is create this dialogue between folks like you that are working hard to try and solve the issues of Hawaii and particularly in the labor workforce. But I suppose you didn't see yourself when you were 10 years old and thinking about, Mom, what do I want to do when I grow up? This maybe might not have been on it, but tell me about it, Lord Ryan. Tell me about your first job, and kind of where did work start for you?
Oh gosh. So my first job was actually, I was a sushi maker for about 2 months at a local sushi shop in Eva Beach, Hawaii. So that was like my first getting into the workforce kind of situation. But I would say that you were mentioning, like, what do you want to do when you grow up? I kind of always knew I wanted to go into education as early as freshman year. So I was in the Big Brothers and Big Sisters program at my high school, and mentored 3 different kids in the Big Brothers and Big Sisters program at the very beginning, from ages I think it was first grade to 5th grade. And so
while you were in high school?
While I was in high school.
Yeah.
So it was my first initial inkling into the education world, and that's when I really got interested in becoming possibly a teacher. And so went to undergraduate school in Orange County, California, came back home to teach at my alma mater high school. So I taught there for 6 years and taught social studies there.
Can we ask where you went grad?
I graduated from Campbell High School. So in Eva Beach. And so was able to go back there and felt very lucky to be able to go back there. One of the full circle stories is that my little, when I was in the Big Brothers and Big Sisters program, I actually ended up becoming my student when I was a teacher. And so, not a lot of people know that, but even that full circle moment that you have with a kid from as early as 3rd grade, when he said he had no friends, to being a student now that I got to see graduate fully, just, fantastic. And you get to see the world of growth that happens in education. And so did that for 6 years, and then hopped over to the Chamber of Commerce a year ago, and have been doing some of the great work here and continuing to do that on the nonprofit side as well as the education and business side. And so I feel very fortunate to have many journeys in education. I think people get stuck in the classroom at some points in time, which is not a bad thing, right? But I think it gives me the opportunity to see many different lanes and many different lenses of education in the world.
Well, 6 years in the education system in Hawaii, I'm sure you kind of learned it probably front to back, and maybe some people decide to stay their whole career that way. Why did you change this way? Do you feel like there might be a little bit different impact you could have?
Yeah, I mean, I always knew that I wanted to experience many different facets of education. I was super interested and did a lot of great work with like Teach for America when it comes to education and workforce development, particularly around equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like interested in a career in, multicultural education. But what ended up landing on my lap was this role
Mm-hmm.
from a fellow colleague of mine. And what I saw in it was the opportunity to see equity from a different lens.
Mm-hmm.
And that lens was through providing students these opportunities for social mobility,
Mm-hmm.
for being able to kind of see the workforce from a different lens and being able to break through different ceilings when it comes to different workforces. And so that was the exciting part of the role.
Sure.
And I was already doing some of this work at Campbell High School as an academy lead there. And so it kind of lined up in the stars for me to be here, and I absolutely love it. I think it's a fun job for me to be able to be social. I don't know if you can,
Yeah.
this from my personality that I like to talk to people.
Uh-huh.
So it gives me the opportunity to talk to people, but also stay kind of connected to the classroom in a different way, shape, and form.
Sure. Some people, when they leave high school, they don't want to ever go back there again.
Oh, I loved it. It was fun.
Well, I'm sure, yeah, making it fun and being able to show people these different pathways with excitement and things. I'm sure Keala is very happy that she's got you on board.
That's what I was going to say. We won the lottery. I mean, who better to be able to help connect that bridge between employers and educators than an educator? And when you're building a team, you're looking for people who will complement each other. And admittedly, as a non-educator, we had a gap on our team. And so I was thrilled when we were able to recruit and hire Lord Ryan away from the classroom. But as I tell everybody, including his principal from Campbell High School, his contribution is amplified now and broader. So he's making a contribution beyond the group of students he worked with. And so everybody gets a little piece of Lord Ryan.
Well, and I'm sure all the educators that saw you grow up, Lord Ryan, too, are like, hey, celebrating as you're having success. And I think all of us, too, once we realize that, if I realize that if I would have had picked out or had a few more different mentors that kind of just, kind of led me along a little bit in some different things, I might have been able to see the world a little bit differently. Yeah. And that creates a lot of, choices and things that people didn't realize that they had. And so Hawaii particularly, sometimes people don't feel like, well, I'm never going to leave Hawaii, but it feels like, some people they go to the mainland and come back and come home and they want that experience, off of the island, it appears. And so that, you may have some statistics about that, and I didn't ask you to prepare any of that, but sometimes, you've got a lot of these, student athletes too, that they go and they do their 2-year community college or, with sports, or they 4 years, and then those resources, hopefully they come back, but a lot of times they don't come back. That's what do they call that when we're having this net negative
brain drain versus brain gain?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, especially when they want to come back and it's $1 million for a house, and I mean, we won't get a full economic discussion, but it is challenging for families, to come back. Having a family wage, as you said, that does pose a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and for those students who do go away, one thing leads to another, and whether or not they're in Boston, Seattle, or Orange County, inevitably at some point in their 4 years, they start to look for something called an internship, for instance.
Right.
And so they establish a network, they gain experience, and one thing leads to another, and we lose these best and brightest students.
Right.
And so one very specific thing we're working on is providing more internship opportunities for our Hawaii college students. Mm-hmm. This is a project that it's on our to-do list. We've not started to make a whole lot of progress yet because we've sort of been just kind of, our vision has been taken more over by COVID than something like this. But imagine the impact we can have if we can say, all you students on the mainland going to college, there's an opportunity here in Hawaii for an internship if you would like it. And internships, of course, often lead to employment. So that's just one specific example of the work we do to try to keep the Hawaii kids thriving in Hawaii. It's a tough, and it's a multi-pronged issue. We would have a whole economic discussion because it goes far beyond, can I get an internship? Far, far, far beyond.
Right. Yeah. Where am I going to stay while, if my auntie doesn't live over here, I'm not going to be able to do an internship in Hawaii, and she lives on the Big Island, so I can't go over to Oahu. And so, yeah, there's limitations as well as, some of the great benefits. But going back in your career, Keala, what's one thing that you wish you had known when you began your career? Maybe tell us where that was, your initial career, sort of the budding place. Where were you? And
Yeah. I'll have to think about that. One thing I had known, you hear it often, and it is to make yourself uncomfortable every day and push yourself beyond the limit that you think is suitable for you, because oftentimes other people are going to have a greater belief in you than you have in yourself. And so for me, I started my, you didn't ask me about my very first job, and I wanted to tell you.
Well, you could say that you started your career at this,
Yes.
at this, humble place, and then you can go from there.
I started at this humble place called Orange Julius, making orange Julius and hot dogs.
With the hat too.
And it taught me to show up on time, and it taught me not to give free hot dogs to my brothers who showed up all the time asking for free hot dogs. But that's a whole nother story. I started my career in marketing and communications, and I worked for Nike and I worked for Microsoft on the mainland, really exciting jobs. But my desire was to get back to Hawaii. And so my job with Nike allowed me the opportunity to move back to Hawaii, which was like serendipitous.
Right.
And so I worked for Nike based in Hawaii for 10 years during marketing. And that was just a lovely, period. But at some point, Nike left the local market. And so it required me to make a tough decision. Do I move to Beaverton, Oregon? I had an oldest in kindergarten. Or do I find something different? Because there's no Nike in Hawaii any longer. Right. And that's when I moved to healthcare, and that healthcare marketing, and that opened up a whole host of advancement opportunities, primarily because people saw something in me and they believed in me. And I'll tell you, it's pretty scary when you're moving into an arena that you've never worked in before, and then quickly moving along. But it makes you uncomfortable, and if you're not making yourself uncomfortable, then you're not growing, you're not stretching, and you're not always succeeding. I have many failures, but net, it all worked out pretty well.
Right. Well, we teach kids to be a little bit afraid of failures, but failures sometimes are sort of our window or doorway through to growth. And so if you fall, it's about how you get back up, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And it is so true. When one door closes, another door opens. And so, don't despair.
Yeah, I lost my job at the pizza place. It's the end of the world. But we're all always learning and trying to be better, and trying to become what Hawaii needs. Are the schools, the secondary, the post-education piece, that seems like there's good partnerships there, like Kapiolani Community College and different things outside of high school. Now there's another group of folks that we're trying to pull in there, that even there's a community health new program, a community health worker program that they're trying to ramp up to help with the ambulance teams out there in the field. So there's all these different kinds of things coming up. Is there enough teachers and classes enough to do all the training? Your experience so far, or is that one of the challenges you're looking at as well?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the challenges. I mentioned those three sectors, and education is right underneath it. And so there's a great need for teachers, substitute teachers, childcare workers, administrators. Lord Ryan, you probably have more to add on that.
Yeah, huge need. I mean, COVID alone has really kind of highlighted some of the needs that our education system had. We had a lot of education things needed already, but like if you think about substitute teachers, for example, there is a shortage of substitute teachers around the state right now, for teachers who might need to take off because of COVID or any type of other sickness or related health issue. And so that's a huge need. Something that we're also seeing, and part of the work that we do at the chamber, is to connect those employers because of this new academy system that we mentioned earlier. Some of our teachers don't have experience in these fields, right? So they're teaching about this field with their core curriculum. So say, for example, I'm a social studies teacher, teaching about culinary, and I have no idea how to cook an egg or something like that, right? I do know how to cook an egg, but in the event I didn't, I don't have that wealth of experience to teach these students those specific skills for a place they're interested in. So it's even more crucial and important that we bring in those partners from the workforce, from our secondary partners, to support some of the things that our teachers are currently having to face now when it comes to the wealth of information and the wealth of skills that they're going to need to possess in order to teach our students.
Right. It, but I see all the new buildings and stuff. KCC has a new culinary school that they're building. There's a dental hygiene program going up at West Oahu, that they're moving over there with things. So there's the resources, it feels like, are there. It's just finding enough people to come over here and get interested and things. But tell us, I mean, the listeners are excited about, I mean, the potential for us, but what are some of the, if you were going back again and if you had one choice to choose another career, or again, everyone loves what they're doing now, like, well, I'm doing what I wanted to do, and that's of course what you're doing. But if was there ever a thought where you were doing something totally different, or a thought that you might be good at? Again, jumping careers is a challenging thing for some people, but right now, as people are looking and exploring, maybe doing something else is exciting. But if you had the chance, would there be other things that you two would look at?
Well, before I talk about myself, I just want to pick up on what you mentioned. There are a number of people who have been displaced, for instance, in hospitality. But what we want people to know is that they have a skill set that's transferable. And so, if you worked at a front desk at a hotel, you're fantastic at multitasking, customer service, and probably technology. And so you could very well be a help desk technician. And that is one of the greatest demands. It's an entry-level position in the technology arena, but it can often be a foot in the door. And so, we're trying to help people think about how they can transfer. So shifting now to myself, I thought, as probably many 14-year-old girls, I thought I wanted to be a newscaster. I wanted to go into broadcast journalism, until I realized that I'd have to probably live in places like Boise, Idaho. Nothing against Boise, Idaho, and in fact, Boise is probably a large market. I have to pick a very big.
Small market.
Yeah.
Pocatello.
But it would require me to leave Hawaii, and so that's where marketing and communications opened up. But I don't know, I guess what comes to mind is, a travel writer, right? Everyone wants to be a food critic or a travel writer. So I'm going to stay in my sweet spot and not come up with anything too crazy.
I like that. I like the sounds of it,
Right?
Mm-hmm. Lord Ryan?
Yeah. I mean, I told you very early on I wanted to be an educator. I mean, I've reflected a little bit about what I would have wanted to do in the event that, I wasn't in the world of education. I would have loved to become a dermatologist if I had the opportunity to go back to school. Only thing is I'm very queasy when it comes to like anything healthcare related. I have a very soft spot for like dermatology and making sure that folks who have skin conditions are taken care of. And so I would definitely want to make sure that I go in that direction. But again, I don't think I have the stomach for it.
Yeah, that is challenging. They have all these videos. I don't even want to bring them up, but they've, all
I can't even watch like Dr. Pimple Popper or whatever.
Yeah, that's
we're not going there.
I was like, oh no, so we're not going there, but I just can't do it.
Yeah. But you know what? That's, these people go to, 18 years of school to go, do those kind of things and help people. So you never know what kind of career opportunities are out there once you get in, but just putting your foot out there and getting in somewhere. I've heard from lots of other folks that come and visit. They just start something. They just start and they go with it until they start learning about themselves. Because when you're young, you don't really know about what you're good at and what you're not good at. You just have to go somewhere and start. And
right.
And yeah, go ahead.
We're working right now, literally on a presentation for third grade girls to help them think about careers in STEM and specifically engineering. And so, how do you sort of have the light bulb go off for a third grade girl that maybe, because they're needed and wanted in the STEM fields, in particular engineering. And so that's something we're developing right now. And so question we're trying to answer ourselves. So fortunately, we get to work with engineers to get that input from them.
Awesome. Yeah. Again, these career paths are living wages in Hawaii, which is difficult to come by. But for 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 what do you see? Everyone's got an agenda. COVID's kind of messed it up. Over the next 5 years, what you combine with different groups, and do you have a sort of a vision of what you hope to accomplish through it feels like just a small part of the rest of the whole network that needs to work to solve this. But where do you see yourselves fitting in and maybe growing in the future and exploring other ways to support the workforce?
Yeah. So a lot of the work we do is directly working with educators. That's what Lord Ryan does. But the other half of what we do is putting systems in place so that 5 years from now, the vision that we and many others have is actually come to fruition. And so some of those systems are things like plentiful work-based learning opportunities, such as internships. Every student who wants one can get one.
Right.
And we are far from there. I think we have about 10% of students at some of our most active schools actually have internships. So we want to create this belief system where employers find value in taking time for that. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that there's systems in place so that businesses don't have to work hard to say, yeah, I'll host an intern, and then they have to develop systems from scratch. Sure. We want them to be able to just plug into a very efficient system. So that's something that we're working on. We want to make it a no-brainer for people to say yes to work with our students.
Well, especially if it's ready-made. And listen, I don't know how to put, if they've got someone helping with the internship process, because that's really what the challenge is. When you have volunteers, you have to have someone that manages the volunteers and make sure that they are. But again, we used to have candy stripers, and I remember it seems like people were going out and working younger when they were 16 years old, 15, 16 years old. That's been a little bit of a change. We don't have as many of our high school folks actually working and getting their feet wet already by the time they get out of high school.
And do you know why that is? Because there are so many child labor laws and issues that make it scary for employers. They want to make sure that they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's and doing it in a safe way for minors. And so that's one very specific thing that we're working with the Department of Education on, helping equip employers with all of the forms and support so that they can do it and not open themselves up to any type of issues.
Yeah, it is a lot of risk, bringing someone that's maybe not skilled at it yet, but again, this is the risk that we have to absorb in order to start, I'm in the healthcare profession, and there's a need for certified nurses assistants, and basically we're bringing in, CMS has made an allowance that can allow some of these folks that aren't certified to come in, and we can do the training for them, and it helped to extend some of our needs. Yeah. And so working with government to create some openings that way. Of course, we don't want to put the youth at risk or anything like that, but certainly creating more of those avenues, at least to go out and make some money and what was it when we put some gas in the car and go see a movie? I think that was what we wanted to go do. But so there's a future out there. There's systems that we need to put into place. Who are our biggest partners that we need that come to the table? But the education folks. Who are some of our other partners that you work as the Chamber of Commerce with to help move this along?
I'll get us started and then throw it to you, Lord Ryan. So that's really, I think, one of the most encouraging things, David. There is what I would call an unprecedented amount of collaboration happening among the right individuals right now, where we can actually start to do something different. And so one leg of that stool are our philanthropy community and the funders who have a vision and can provide some much needed funding for what's happening. So that's one leg of the stool. The second is the business industry, and that's where the chamber comes in. And then the third are the educators. And so that's kind of the big picture. But some of the collaborators, there's an organization, Hawaii P20, Partnerships for Education. And it's a nonprofit here in Hawaii that really helps to bring together a strategy from P through, into career, to help move our students along that education to career pipeline. So P20 is doing wonderful work. Stephen Schatz is their executive director. They do a lot of their career and technical education work. We couldn't do our work without them. We also work very closely with, for instance, Kamehameha Schools. They're doing a lot of work, and they have resources, and they have a vision. And so they're an important partner of ours as well. The state, we have under the DLIR, Department of Labor Industry Relations, they have the Workforce Development Division. So you can imagine that they become a wonderful partner. So we're heavily, heavily working closely with them. So we have private sector, public sector, government, philanthropy, everybody working together on this. And then, of course, you can't leave out the University of Hawaii system and the Hawaii Department of Education. They are our largest partners, biggest collaborators. But there's some good things happening right now in our community to come together, amplify each other's work, and get something different done. Because we can't just make sure that, the status quo has not been serving us very well.
Yeah, the same old is not going to get it.
Lord Ryan, would you add anything on that?
I feel like you hit it all nail on the head there. There's all these different collaborators that are coming together right now anyway. That is really, really exciting to see all of the work that's getting done.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's what we'd like to do here on Hawaii Boss, because again, we're not doing this for money. We want to escalate the conversation to make sure that everybody gets to the table that needs to and talk about these important issues. So instead of, in our little silos and trying to say, well, that's yours over there, this is mine over here. In Hawaii, we have to do it differently. The folks I interviewed on Kauai, some of those folks, they really have to, when, there's emergency strikes, they've got to get together. Oahu's a little bit more, the coming together is a little bit more challenging, but still there's opportunities if we're talking to the right people and we have some smart initiatives that make sense and that are financially feasible, but that bring all those folks together into one hui.
Yeah. And I think something that has made it challenging for Hawaii in the past is sort of that boil the ocean tendency. We want to try to do everything, and of course we fail in many cases. But as of late, there seems to be more of a prioritization and a focus on a few of the right areas, and so that seems to be
pragmatic approach.
Right. And I think of the Hawaii Community Foundation's change framework that identifies work into community, healthcare, arts, natural resources, government, and education. And so we have this framework to gather under. That's just one example of how we're practicing prioritization and resisting the temptation to boil the ocean, as I said.
Right. Well, I wish we could probably spend another couple of hours talking about all the great things you guys are doing. I wish we could, but before we go, we'd like to know a little bit more about you folks, and we'll start with you, Lord Ryan. When you're not doing this, what are you doing?
Oh gosh, what am I doing? I feel like a lot of my time recently has really just been spending quality time with people that I don't see very often. I think. We get so busy with our daily lives that we don't get to see our friends and our family as much as we want to. So when I have a free minute, I usually like to schedule some time with a friend over dinner or family. I also have been training for the marathon.
Oh, hey, that's nothing. That's just a little training
doing
for the marathon.
Lot of, working out and figuring out the endurance things has been a big part of my kind of regimen recently. But I would say I'm a huge quality time human when it comes to that type of stuff.
That is so awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And Keala, when you're not here and you want to get away, where do we find you?
Well, the reality is, like so many people, I'm part of the sandwich generation. So I do spend a lot of my time caring for my elderly parents. So there's that. But like Lord Ryan mentioned, that's quality time with important people in your life. So that's one aspect. And then I'm a new empty nester. So I've got 2 kids in college, and so. It's definitely a transition time to be able to, cook leisurely meals and, spend time with my husband and close friends. So I'm a big cook. I love to experiment, and I love to host functions. So that's how I spend a lot of my time.
Lord Ryan, have you had any of that good food she's talking about?
No, now I think I need to try it. I've also recently got into cooking, like about 6 months ago. So at this point, Keala, we should have a potluck competition.
Right?
Fun.
We're due.
Awesome. Well, you guys we got something to do. So yeah, next time when you guys get together, the chamber gets together for post-COVID, potluck or whatever like that, I'll bring some banana bread or something like that. My wife makes a mean cinnamon roll. See, I'm not that good of a cook, but anyway, thanks you guys for, again, sharing your time and a bit of yourselves and the important work that you're doing. And that, again, as we strive together, sort of, we pull together, we do it the way, sort of a sustainable and with aloha. And so I look forward to continuing to hear the great stuff that's coming from you folks and the work that you're doing and charging up those young folks as they're coming out of high school, ready to go. So again, hope to have you back on as we hear new stuff from you guys and new opportunities for serving and providing these resources for Hawaii's youth and the workforce. Any last words from any of you before you would like to, before we leave?
No, just thanks for the chance to have a real fun, casual conversation. And, if anyone's listening and they've been inspired by anything they've heard, they know where to reach us at the Chamber of Commerce Hawaii, cochawaii.org. We'd love to work with businesses in Hawaii to help you take the baby steps to, start working with some of our students in schools. It's very rewarding work.
Well, and pays long-term dividends too, as we know. So again, to both of you, Keala and Lord Ryan, thank you so much. And until next time, aloha.
Great pleasure, John.
Make sure to subscribe to Hawaii Boss and follow us on social media at Hawaii Boss Podcast at the links in the description. We'll see you soon in the boss's office.